This video is something I've been debating the past couple days whether to make or not. As a candidate for United States Senate, some people said I shouldn't get myself involved in this. But I think it's time someone stood up and said the right things. This is all about the Florida school shooting. Of course, I am not getting into the politicalization of it. Although some people will say that I am. I am a Second Amendment supporter. Concealed carry. I open carry everywhere I go. The Florida shooting is a perfect example of why I carry. I refuse to be a victim. I refuse to allow anybody within my eyesight to be a victim. I'm 100% supporter of the Second Amendment, and I believe the biggest problem is that we're not. Change that. I'm not even going to go there. What I'm going to do to open this up is the past couple days I have seen a couple postings on Facebook that I think are very pertinent to this situation in the argument over cause and effect. There's no way, the left immediately, as soon as this happened, started blaming the guns. Who needs an AR? Why do you need an assault rifle? It's not an assault rifle, folks. Assault rifles don't exist. It's a terminology developed by the liberal for some gun that they think looks scary. It's a rifle, okay? That's all it is. It's a rifle. It's got a funny design because actually it's a rather comfortable rifle. The way the pistol grip is, the way the hand guards are when it fits in your shoulder. It's a very comfortable. It's actually more comfortable than a plain old style stock rifle. I really enjoy shooting the AR because, like I said, it's a comfortable weapon. But the thing is it's not the weapon. The weapon is nothing but a tool. The person that conducted the shooting in Florida was a deranged individual. He wasn't a terrorist. Let's get that straight. The definition of a terrorist and the definition of a deranged individual who commits murder is something totally different. Can you blame mental illness? Well, think about that. Anybody that goes out and kills somebody else intentionally, yeah, they're a little mentally ill. But under the clinical terminology of mental illness, no. This kid, plain and simple, had a vendetta against that school. That's all it was. He had a vendetta. He hated the people in it. And he had an intention to bring them harm. That's not a terrorist. That's just a plain out murderer. Okay? I've heard on the news today that he's willing to plead guilty if the death penalty is taken off the table. Nope. Because it ain't like he can defend himself and get off. Okay? That ain't going to happen. The death penalty needs to be on the table. Period. If I was a prosecutor, that's exactly what I'd be going for. But before I get any further into this, let me read a couple things about the argument over why we have these problems today in society. I've seen where supposedly there's been 18 school shootings since the 1st of January, a little over a month and a half. Some of them aren't technically school shootings. They're not like this. But the liberals are going to classify that way to make it sound worse. So let me go over a couple of these things real quick, and then I'll get more in depth into what I was talking about. This is a post from a lady named Kelly Guthrie Raleigh. It was reposted. It ended up on my thing. She says, okay, I'll be the bad guy and say what no one else is brave enough to say, but wants to say. I'll take all the criticism and attacks from everyone because you know what? I'm a teacher. I live this life daily, and I won't do anything else. But I also know daily I could end up in an active shooter situation. Well, Kelly, if for whatever reason you get lucky enough to hear this, let me explain to you, you do not have to take all the criticism. I have no issues taking criticism over what this whole video is going to say. Okay? But, after reading your post, you're right. And I'll take the criticism with you. All right? Because some of the things that the way you put it is a more elegant way some of the things that I've been saying for years. She says, until we as a country are willing to get serious and talk about mental health issues, lack of available care for the mental health issues, lack of discipline in the home, horrendous lack of parental support when the schools are trying to control horrible behavior at school, parentheses, oh no, not my kid. What did you do to cause my kid to react that way? We're going to get into that. Lack of moral and any compassion. Lack of moral values, and yes, I'll say it. Violent video games that take away all sensitivity to any compassion for others' lives, as well as reality TV that makes it commonplace for people to consistently scream up in each other's faces and not value any other person but themselves. We will have a gun problem in school. Our kids don't understand the permanency of death anymore. I grew up with guns. Everybody knows that. But you know what? My parents never supported any bad behavior from me. I was terrified of doing something bad at school, as I would not have not had a life until I corrected the problem and straightened my ass out. My parents invaded my life. They knew where I was all the time. They made me have a curfew. They made me wake them up when I got home. You're lucky. My parents was awake when I got home. They made me respect their rules. They had full control of their house, and at any time could and would go through every inch of my bedroom, backpack, pockets, anything. Parents, it's time to step up. Be the parent that actually gives a crap. Be the annoying mom that pries and knows what your kid is doing. Stop being their friend. They have enough friends at school. Be their parent. Be the cool mom, but being the cool mom means not a damn thing when either your kid is dead or your kid kills other people because they were allowed to have their space and privacy in your home. In your home. I'll say it again. My home was filled with guns growing up. For God's sake, my daddy was an 82nd Airborne Ranger. Hoorah. Who lost half his face saving our country. But you know what? I never dreamed of shooting anyone with his guns. I never dreamed of taking one. I was taught respect for human life, compassion, rules, common decency, and most of all, I was taught that until I moved out, my life and bedroom wasn't mine. It was theirs. And they were going to know what was happening because they loved me and wanted the best for me. She says, there, say that I'm a horrible person. I didn't bring up gun control. I will refuse to debate it with anyone. This post wasn't about gun control. This was me loving the crap out of people and wanting the best for them. This was about my school babies and knowing that God created each one for greatness and just wanted them to reach their futures. It's about 20 years ago this year I started my teaching career. Violence was not this bad 20 years ago. Lack of compassion wasn't this bad 20 years ago. And God knows 20 years ago that I wasn't afraid daily to call a parent because I knew that 9 out of 10 would cuss me out, tell me to go to hell, call the news on me, call the school board on me, or post all over Facebook about me because I called to let them know what their child chose to do at a school because they are a normal kid. She says these 17 lives mattered. When are we going to take our own responsibility seriously? You know, I commend her for that because plain and simple, it's the truth, folks. It's exactly the situation. This come across this morning. It says posted by a teacher at a local high school. I don't know where it was posted from. 6 of my students just talked all the way through the moment of silence for the dead students. They had a moment of silence at school for the students that was killed in Florida. And 6 of her class just sat there and ignored it and talked. And y'all think an inanimate object is the problem. Culture is the problem. Our music celebrities, drugs, rape, gangs, and murder. I'm sorry. Our music celebrates, well, it's the celebrities too. Our music celebrates drugs, rape, gangs, and murder. Our movies make millions off scenes of crime and murder and gunfights. We teach the children they can do no wrong, then bash the law and order and teach them to hate authority. Society created this. You know, here's one that I'm going to read excerpts from. It says, R.I.P. America, you went soft on discipline. You took God out of schools. Parents were told, no, you can't discipline your child. Kids had rights, blah, blah, blah. It says, you shall reap what you sow. We have lost a whole generation and turned them into selfish, disrespectful brats who have no respect for people, property, or authority. I'm not going to read that one because it's going to kind of it's going to extend the time period that I had planned on being on here. You know, those things said exactly a little better than what I've said for a long time. That, and there's been several posts on here I've seen too. It's, when I was a kid, we had guns in school. In our cars, especially hunting season. You had kids that drove pickup trucks to school, and they had rifle racks at the back window, and most of the time they had a rifle or a shotgun in them, and they were loaded a lot of times. Especially during hunting season. Because the school was out, those kids was heading to the woods. Some of them had already been in the woods before they went to school. And nobody said anything. Nobody had a problem. We didn't have these school shootings. Prior to 1999 and the Columbine shooting, I don't even remember a couple shootings before then. One of them was that knucklehead in Stockton, California. Took an AK-47 and shot up a schoolyard. That's what imposed the assault rifle ban. That did absolutely no good. This there was another one I seen on here, and I didn't copy it. I don't remember where it's at now. It said we've had rifles, we've had guns in this country for over 200 years. But we haven't had mass shootings up until the past 30 years. What's changed? Well, I'm going to tell you what's changed, folks. We started changing 50 years ago as a society. How do you fix the problem of these shootings? It ain't the weapons. It's not the tools that the shooters use. It's the people. Okay? This weapon on my side right here will stay here until I pull it out. Even when I pull it out and flash it around like I did a while ago, it's not doing anybody any harm. My M4 is in the closet. Now it's unloaded. This is loaded, round in the chamber. Because if I have to defend myself, I'm not taking time to chamber around. I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to pull the trigger. That's when that weapon will be effective. When I pull the trigger. Until that point, that weapon does nothing. Wow, think about that. That piece of metal and plastic that's shaped all scary to the liberals does absolutely nothing until I pull the trigger. So who's at fault? I see the standard thing, if we're going to blame guns, I've seen one on there. It's a standard argument, anti-liberal argument is, the liberals argue that it's the guns, and people come back at them and say, well, when someone drives drunk and kills somebody, we blame the person, not the car. Whenever somebody else does something else, we blame the person, not the item. But when someone shoots someone, we blame the gun, not the person. And that's true. But why do we have these problems? To fix the problem, first thing you have to do, you have to understand the cause. That's in everything. If you look at every video I have about anything in here, the budget, everything, fix the cause. Determine the cause first. You cannot fix any problem until you understand the cause of the problem. The cause of these problems, these shootings, are not the weapons or the tools being used. It's the people doing it. Now, why are they doing it? And it's not mental illness. I already explained that. Not in the clinical sense. That teacher just explained it right there. Those things I read off explained it. We have, in the past 50 years, we have changed how children are raised. We have participation trophies. All right? A Little League group goes out and wins a championship. But we don't want the losers to have their self-esteem hurt or feel bad about themselves. So we give them a trophy to show that they put forth a good effort. You're missing the point. You win or you lose. Dale Earnhardt had a saying that I didn't find out until years ago. He had his philosophy his whole career. Second place is nothing more than the first loser. If you keep that in your mind, if we teach our children to strive for betterment, if we get them to understand losing is okay because somebody is always going to be better, but that doesn't mean you have to accept losing as a standard of life. What do you learn from not winning? You learn how to do it better the next time. That's the whole point. When I was growing up, we didn't have participation trophies. You either won or you lost. Just the way it was. If you were the losing team, you sit down and you evaluated what you did, you evaluated what the winning team did, and you compared the two. Where did they perform better than we did? Then you learn from that, you develop a strategy to improve. Weakness and strengths. I've heard this for years in the Marine Corps. And leadership in the Marine Corps. You're taught to evaluate the weakness and the strength of yourself first. Of your troops second. You develop the strength. You encourage the strength. And then you turn around and you help that person change their weakness. We don't teach that anymore. We don't teach how to overcome obstacles. That's where the problems are. We don't provide obstacles. When I was a kid growing up, we didn't have all this technology kids have today. We had a TV in the house that got 3 channels. That was on an antenna up on a pole outside. And where we were located at, we got the channels from Cincinnati. 5, 9, and 12. ABC, CBS, and NBC. And that was it. During the day, when we wasn't in school, we were outside playing. Using our imagination. Most of the technology we have today was invented by those people because we had imaginations. We thought of what we would like to do, and then we worked to do it. If we failed, we learned from that failure, and we went back again and tried again until we succeeded. But we also was taught respect. Just like that girl, that teacher was talking about the way her parents was when she was growing up. When I was a kid in school, we got the board. If we got in trouble at school, we got took out the hallway and got the board. I never did. And it wasn't because I was such a good boy. Those 3 licks in the hallway didn't scare me. Well, except for Frank Roush. But what scared me was the fact that my mom and dad told me when I started school that if I ever got in trouble at school and got a spanking, I got another one when I got home. Didn't matter why I got the board of school. I got one when I got home. Because I embarrassed my parents by getting in trouble at school. That was the whooping I was afraid of. So I stayed out of trouble in school so I wouldn't get the one when I got home. We don't teach our children that. We don't teach them respect. We don't even teach children, and I still do it today because this is the way I was raised. When I see the way a child acts, I immediately look at the parents. This is how these parents are raising this child. Because you know what? Today, when I do something stupid, I sit back and go, my daddy taught me better than that. When people look at me today, I still feel that they're seeing my mom and dad when they look at me. If I do good, they say, his parents raised him good. If I screw up, do something stupid, his parents, they look at me and go, my God, what are his parents thinking? We don't do that today in society. We don't teach our children that. I remember, and I use this quite a bit too, when I first got to Macon, Georgia back in 06. It was about a year later. It was springtime of 07. I get up, watch the news every morning. The weather has a lot of effect on the work, so I always watching the news in the morning, checking the weather and stuff for the day. And I remember seeing this 15, 16-year-old kid was killed on a street corner. Now, this was a Thursday morning when I'm watching the news on a school day. This kid was out on a street corner hanging out with friends at 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was a drive-by shooting and he was killed. Now, the police had related it was drug-related, the shooting was. They were interviewing his mom, and his mom was sitting there whining and crying. My baby doesn't involved in drugs. He was a good boy. Blah, 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 blah. You know what? You don't want to know why that kid was killed. If I had the opportunity to tell his mother, you know what I'd say? I'll tell you why he's dead. Look in the freaking mirror. Explain to me, if your kid was if you were such a good parent, why is your high school son on a school night at 1 o'clock in the morning out on a street corner where drugs are involved? Yes, he might not have been involved with drugs. He might have been a pretty good kid. But he had no freaking business at 1 o'clock in the morning being out on a street corner when he should have been in bed, sleeping in order to get up and go ready to go to school the next day. And we wonder why we have these shootings in society. Because we don't raise children no more. We allow them to grow up. For 30 years now, the politically correct culture, it's an abomination to the government to discipline your children. We have celebrities today to say, well, I'm not telling my child they're a boy or a girl. I'm going to let them decide on their own when they grow up. We have people saying, well, I raised my child so they have their own identity. I give them the freedom to be their own person. Do you realize as a parent, your job is to raise them with an identity? You discipline them. When they break a rule, you set rules. When they break the rule, they're punished. And standing them in a freaking corner, sitting them on a couch, giving them a timeout is not punishment. I remember a girl that I dated in California. Her ex-husband kept calling her, calling child services on her. And she volunteered to go through their evaluation program just to prove that he was harassing them with what he was doing. And I remember her telling me that through the program, they told her the law says you can't spank your child, but you can discipline them. You're even allowed to stand them in the corner when they do something wrong. But they cannot be in that corner longer than 1 minute per year of age. I tell you what, my mom and dad, I'm glad they didn't know about that. I wish they'd known about that, because I think they forgot about me sometimes. But I asked her one day, I says, what would they do? If this lady that told you this, what's she going to do when she has a 14, 15-year-old kid? And she goes and tells them go put their nose in the corner for 14 or 15 minutes. And the kid turns around and says, F you. Now what are you going to do? That's the exact problem we have, because that's exactly how kids are doing it. They've not been raised with any discipline. They've not been raised with any rules, regulations, no regimentation to their life. And they have no respect for anything. I saw a video here yesterday, I think it was. This little freaking kid, about 5, 6 years old, mouthing off to this elderly lady, and walked up and kicked her, and she knocked his butt down. His mom come up and got up in her face about you don't hit my kid. Had it been my kid, she wouldn't have had to. He wouldn't have sat down for a month when I got done with him. And I would have apologized to her for the rudeness of my child. There's the problem. It's not mental illness. It's a lack of respect, a lack of discipline. Just like that teacher said, I have a friend who used to be a teacher in inner city schools in Memphis. And she used to tell me about how some of the bad kids in her class, when they acted up, she'd go to the principal about it, and they wouldn't do anything because they're afraid of mommy and daddy coming in and suing them. And I dealt with this with Econo. Parents coming in and whatever their little baby girl wanted, whatever their little baby boy wanted, and the child acted like a piece of trash around their parents. If they disrespect their parents, how are they going to treat other people? This is the problem we have in this country. It's a problem that's been developing for 50 years. We started being lax with children. I made a comment to someone yesterday, the greatest generation. Kids are not raised mentally tough anymore. They're raised weak-minded. Why do you think we got all these safe spaces in colleges? Oh, I'm offended by that word. I need to go to a safe space where I don't hear that word no more. That's why we have these problems. It's not mental illness. It's just a lack of respect for authority, a lack of respect. That's the same reason why we have all these things going on with the cops. Go on YouTube, you can watch it. Now, the problem is the only part of the video you see on YouTube is the part that the person filming it wants you to see. They see the reaction of the police officer. You don't see what that kid or that person did that created the reaction to the police officer. You only see the reaction of the officer because that kid that created the reaction, his buddy's the one that's filming, and they're trying to make the cop look bad, okay? You got to think, folks. You go, oh my gosh, cops are bad. No, it's not. It's the person that the cops had to come up against is the bad. I agree there are the bad cops, okay? I'm not saying that. Okay, there's bad in every group. But you only see one side of the subject. Okay? You got to think. Liberals talk about being open-minded. The most closed-minded people in the world. If it ain't the way they want, then it's you're racist, sexist, and all this other horsemen there. Okay? You want to fix the problem. It's not a quick fix, folks. It means parents today are going to have to buckle down. They're going to have to change. They're going to have to become like their parents or their grandparents. We got to make sure our kids are raised right. They're raised with understanding the difference between winning and losing. To learn a lesson from losing. Mental toughness. I asked someone yesterday, we was discussing this, and I said, why the greatest generation is what we call the World War II veterans. They were the greatest generation. But what made them the greatest generation? It wasn't just the accomplishments they made by going to war and winning a two-front war. I said, we have more PTSD issues coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan than we did Vietnam. We have more PTSD problems out of Vietnam than we did World War II and Korea combined. Why is that? Now, veterans, I'm a veteran, okay, and I'm not taking nothing away from you, and I understand PTSD is a very serious thing, and it's bad. But part of the problem is mental toughness. I saw it when I was in the Corps. I saw a degradation in boot camp, in the toughness, mentally toughness, not the physical, the mental toughness of boot camp. But it's the kids that's coming in the military today. But it's the kids growing up today. They're not raised mentally tough. They're not raised to overcome obstacles. Because there's never been obstacles put in front of them. The greatest generation wasn't just great because they won a two-faced war like they did. They were mentally tough because they survived the Depression. They were kids, teenagers, young adults that lived through the Depression, the Dust Bowl, the hardships. They were more mentally tough, I'm going to say, than any other generation ever. It was that mental toughness that made them so great and able to win World War II the way they did. Their children, and this is partially their fault, in that they were wanting to make their children's lives better than they had it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I want my kids to have a better life than I had. I want my granddaughter to have a better life than her mom has. Okay? But we cannot sacrifice obstacles and what they'll grow up to be just to give them a better life. But that's what we've done, and we've done it most of all without thinking about it. It's been a reaction. It's just been how we've done things. The guys from Vietnam wasn't raised as mentally tough as their parents was. They didn't have a depression to have to suffer through. Their parents wanted them to have a better life than they did, so they made things easier for them. They did the same thing for their children, and their children's doing the same thing for theirs now. But also, too, Vietnam brought to the forefront a liberal attitude in this country. We took God out of school. We're taking God out of this country. We're refusing to admit that this country was based on Christian principles when it was founded. The biggest thing about growing up in Sunday school isn't necessarily learning or becoming a Christian. It's learning morality. It's learning morals, respect for human life and other people. It's learning selflessness, and learning to take care and look out for others before you look out for yourself. That's one of the greatest teachings of Jesus. He said, I did not come on this earth to serve, to be served. I came to serve. As a Christian, that's how we are. We serve others. We do for others. That is being taken out of our society. You want to fix the problem, it's going to take a while. Because we have a generation that's grown up without that respect. And they're raising another generation with the same attitude. It's going to take changing this generation's growth to back understanding the way things should be. Mentally tough, obstacles. You're not always a winner. And them raising their children the same way. We've had more shootings like this since Columbine than we ever had in the entire 20th century. The weapons were still there. It was all the same back then. It's not the weapon, it's not the tool, it's the people. The attitude has changed. The only way to salvage, to fix the problem, is we have to change our attitude as a country. Look at the TV shows. The reality shows. Really? When I was growing up, we had sitcoms. We had MASH. We had All in the Family. We had the Jeffersons. You had Charlie's Angels. You had Dukes of Hazzard. They were entertaining. They didn't go into social subjects. Three's Company wasn't about social issues. It was just funny. You could sit down at night and watch TV and forget the issues of the world for a while and have fun and be entertained and joyful. And the stars, the celebrities back then, didn't come out and try to freaking chastise you for the way you thought. They knew that their job was to entertain you, and that's what they did. The movies that was made were for entertainment purposes, not to push a social agenda. Starting in the 90s with MTV, you had, what was it, House Rules or House something or another, and then you had Road Rules. That was the beginning of the reality show. And everybody's expanded on it since. Now you got the Kardashians are idolized in this country. And you wonder why we have issues. You got TV shows that do nothing more than literally use social agendas to push social agendas. And they're supposed to be sitcoms. You have movies being made to propel a social agenda instead of just being entertaining. And Hollywood wants to know why we think they're a bunch of idiots. Shut up, make movies, and entertain me. Quit trying to tell me my beliefs are wrong because they're different than yours. It's for a whole other subject. But I sat down here a while back and just started looking at the difference in the TV shows today versus when I was a kid. And I'm embarrassed. There's nothing fun to watch on anymore. There's nothing entertaining to watch on anymore. But our kids are all enthralled in it. That's my take on the Florida shooting. Sad. All of the shootings in the past 17, 18 years has been unnecessary. This one here was preventable, though. That's the difference. And it's not that signs got overlooked. They just basically blatantly got ignored. But it's the society we live in today. People's afraid to say things. But people said something this time. And it got ignored. And there's going to be a lot of blame game going around. But like I said, folks, there's only one thing that can fix this. And that's us. We have to change. We have to start taking responsibility. This video is a lot longer than I intended it to be. But sometimes it has to be. Thank you for watching.